The $600 album that made Nirvana rock gods look at this. In 1989, this is what rock and roll sounded like. It was polished, it was overproduced, and it was a billion miles away from real life. This was the era of insane excess. We're talking giant hair and even bigger budgets, where rock stars were basically cartoon characters, but in a forgotten corner of Washington, three guys with only $600 and a crazy amount of noise were about to record an album that would literally burn it all down. They were fueled by cheap beer, being totally fed up, and a sound that was as raw as the towns they came from. This is the insane story of Bleach, the $600 album that turned Nirvana into gods, before the sold-out world tours, before the magazine covers, and way before anyone had ever heard Smells Like Teen Spirit. There was Aberdeen, a totally gray, miserable logging town in Washington where your only job was figuring out how to leave, and it was here in this depressing place that Nirvana was born. Kurt Cobain was a super artistic and sensitive kid, born in 1967, who was completely lost in a town that only cared about being tough. He found a friend in the super chill and lanky Chris Novoselic. They met in 1985 and bonded over loving punk rock and hating everything else. After a couple years, they finally started a band in 1987. Their first real gig was at a house party. They played their own songs, drank all the beer, and almost got into a fight for refusing to play covers. It was the perfect start. From day one, they were loud, they didn't compromise, and they had absolutely no money. The early years were a total mess, and it was all because of one huge problem. They could not keep a drummer. The band went through them like they were nothing. Aaron Burkhardt, their first, was gone in 1988. Then Dale Crover from the Melvins played on their demo, and then they had another guy named Dave Foster for like 5 minutes. The band was so unstable it felt like they were going nowhere, just stuck in the mud. Their sound was too heavy for pop music, but it was too catchy for hardcore punk. They were outsiders, even to the other outsiders. The moment that changed everything was January 23rd, 1988. The band, with Dale Crover on drums, scraped together a little bit of cash to record at a studio in Seattle with a producer named Jack Endino. In one day, they recorded a 10-song demo that was just pure, unfiltered anger and melody. Endino was so blown away, he gave the tape to Jonathan Poneman, who started the tiny Seattle record label, Sub Pop. Poneman heard something incredible in the noise. He heard the heavy sound of Black Sabbath, the rage of Black Flag, but he also heard amazing pop songs buried under all the distortion. He offered the band a deal not for an album, but just for a single. In November 1988, Sub Pop released Nirvana's first record, a cover of Love Buzz and their own song Big Cheese. The single made just enough noise in the underground for Sub Pop to agree to more. But the label was also completely broke and only wanted an EP. Cobain and Novoselic wanted a full album. They had the songs, they had the drive, but they had no money. The entire thing was about to die before it even started. And then a solution appeared out of nowhere. A guitarist named Jason Everman, a friend of their new drummer Chad Channing, loved their sound so much he wanted to join the band. To prove he was serious, he made an unbelievable offer. He would pay for the recording sessions himself. The final bill was $606.17. It was an insane amount of money for guys who had to scrounge for gas money, but it was the key that unlocked the entire future. With the cash secured, Nirvana went back to Jack Endino's studio to make a legendary album. With Jason Everman's money ready to go, Nirvana walked into reciprocal recording in late 1988 with one mission. Producer Jack Endino said they were unbelievably prepared, rehearsing for weeks. They had to be. They were recording on an 8-track machine, which meant there was zero room for mistakes. The entire album was recorded and mixed in about 30 hours. The band knew exactly what they wanted. They told Endino to make it sound dry, crunchy, and like a 70 seconds rock record. The result was an album that was punishing and primal. Chris Novoselic's bass sounded like a distorted earthquake. Chad Channing's drumming was powerful and simple, and Kurt Cobain's guitar was like a weapon, going from the heavy, sludgy riffs of Blue and Negative Creep to insane punk rock attacks. Kurt reportedly wrote a ton of the lyrics the night before recording, just scribbling them in notebooks. They were pieces of his anxiety, pictures of his decaying hometown, and just screams of feeling like an outsider. On the super heavy song Paper Cuts, which was recorded with Dale Crover Curtis' voice, is a terrifying shriek. But hidden in all the anger was a song that showed the future. It was a track called About a Girl. Cobain wrote it after listening to Meet the Beatles for an entire afternoon on repeat. It was a simple, catchy pop song, completely different from the rest of the album. He was so scared to show it to Chris and Chad because he thought they'd hate it for being too soft. When Chad Channing asked what the song was called, Kurt just mumbled, "It's about a girl." The girl was his girlfriend at the time, Tracy Miranda, who was paying their rent and begging him to get a job. She didn't even know the song. Was about her 4 years until she read it in a book. Putting About a Girl on Bleach was a huge risk, but it was the first real sign of the pop genius that would soon take over the entire world. Bleach was released on June 15, 1989. There was no media frenzy, no giant explosion. The mainstream music world didn't even notice. Critics liked the album and it was a hit on college radio, but it was not a commercial success. Before Nevermind blew up, Bleach only sold about 40,000 copies in North America. It sold okay for Sub Pop, but it didn't chart and it didn't make the band rich. To support the album, the band got in a van for their first ever national tour. It was awful. They played for tiny crowds, slept on people's floors, and barely made enough money to get to the next show. The tension in the band got even worse. Jason Everman, the guy who paid for the whole album, was now an outsider. They saw him as a moody metalhead and he had no say in the band he literally bought into. The tour ended with the band canceling their last shows and taking a long, silent drive all the way back to Washington. When they got home, Jason Everman was out of the band. They didn't fire him. They just stopped calling him. But the grind never stopped that fall. They went on a 6-week European tour with the band Tad. The tour was a total disaster with technical problems and pure exhaustion. During one show in Rome, a frustrated and overwhelmed Kurt reportedly had a nervous breakdown on stage, climbed a huge speaker, and threatened to jump. He was talked down and then told everyone the band was breaking up. They didn't break up, they kept going, because even though Bleach didn't make them stars, it gave them something more important, an identity, a fan base, and a foundation. It proved they could create something incredible out of literally nothing but debt and pure will. Bleach is an album that was born because it had to be. It's a raw nerve, recorded for almost no money by a band that was hungry, angry, and desperate for someone to listen. It didn't become a massive hit until after Nevermind changed the music industry forever. For years, it was just the first Nirvana record. Most people don't own it, like Kurt would say on stage. But everything that made Nirvana the biggest band in the world is right here on Bleach, in its most raw form. The rage of Negative Creep, the crushing power of School, and the shockingly beautiful pop song About a Girl, it's all there. It's the sound of a band figuring out just how powerful they are in real time. It's the sound of 3 guys from nowhere, with just over $600, creating the blueprint for a revolution. Nevermind might have been the album that made them the biggest band in the world, but Bleach was the album that made them Nirvana, call to action. What is your favorite song from Bleach? Is it the insane power of School or the hidden pop song About a Girl? Let me know in the comments right now. And if you want more insane stories behind the music that changed the world, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching.